You're doing everything right, or at least it seems like it. You're visualizing, you're meditating, you're repeating affirmations until your jaw aches. But life still isn't moving the way you hoped. That message doesn't come, the job doesn't shift, the tension in your chest doesn't melt. And quietly, secretly, beneath all your spiritual effort, you start to wonder if something's wrong with you. But it's not that something's wrong, it's that something's reversed. Because here's the truth most people don't see. You don't change your reality by reacting to it. You change it by stopping the reaction, by ending the loop of unconscious response, by becoming still enough to broadcast something new. When you react, you reinforce. Every emotional flinch, every mental commentary, every grip of urgency tells the field, this is what's real, this is who I am. And the quantum doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you are, what you embody, what you broadcast with the full coherence of your nervous system. So when you're waiting on the text and feeling tight, you're not waiting neutrally, you're waiting as a signal. And that signal says, I don't have it yet. I need it to feel safe. That's not a wish, that's a command. The field obeys. The same is true when you check your bank account and feel that jolt of panic, when you scroll past someone's success and feel the twinge of comparison. When you try to force yourself to feel abundant, even though your stomach is clenched and your breath is shallow. These are all subtle reactions, but they are potent broadcasts. Reality is not responding to your thoughts, it's responding to your state. And reactivity, no matter how spiritual it looks, is still a state of fear. It's still trying to manage instead of magnetize, still effort instead of essence. So what happens when you stop reacting? What happens when you let the discomfort rise and don't flinch? When you feel the urge to control and choose to breathe instead? When you hold the same empty space that life seems to be showing you, and instead of filling it with panic, you infuse it with presence? That's when you become different, not conceptually, energetically. And when you become different, the mirror must shift. But let's slow this down. Because this isn't about being positive or thinking better. It's about unhooking from the old neurological loops, the reflexive patterns, the split-second reactions that keep you entangled with timelines you no longer want. It's about pausing the movie, long enough to realize that you're not the actor being tossed by the scene. You're the projector, and when you change what's being projected, the scene rewrites itself. But you can't do that while in reaction. Reaction is like static, interference that distorts your signal. You can't hear the higher frequency when you're inside the noise. So the real shift, it's not in the doing, it's in the deactivating, not in the pushing, in the pausing, not in trying to fix the old scene, but in refusing to energize it. The world you see is delayed. It's a reflection of what you previously embodied. If you keep responding to it as if it's truth, you keep the loop alive. But when you witness it, without identifying with it, you create a crack in the code, a moment where presence replaces programming. And that's where your power lives, not in reaction, but in remembering. The quantum doesn't change when you fight what is. It changes when you stop feeding it, when you stop bracing, when you stop narrating, when you simply become the frequency that no longer needs what the old version of you was chasing. Because when you stop reacting to the old, you stop recreating it. And that's the space where new becomes possible. It begins in the body, always. That split second when reality pokes at an old wound, through a silence, a delay, a rejection, a number on a screen. And before you even register the thought, your body reacts. Your chest tightens, your breath shortens, your mind floods with stories, all of them familiar, all of them rehearsed. He's pulling away. I must have done something wrong. It's not working, nothing ever changes. Maybe I'm not aligned enough, maybe I need to try harder, maybe it's me. And with that, the signal is cast, not with your words, but with your frequency. With the vibration encoded into your cells. You're no longer in the now. You're replaying the same survival pattern, in a new disguise. This is what most people miss. Your reactions aren't random. They are echoes. Triggers are time machines. They don't show you the truth of the moment. They show you the unprocessed imprint from before, from childhood, from heartbreak, from every time you reached and didn't receive. So when the outside world flickers in a way that feels off, you go back into the loop. And this is where you lose the timeline, because manifestation doesn't respond to effort, it responds to coherence. And every reaction is a fragmentation of coherence. You split from your knowing, you split from your safety, you split from the frequency you're trying to become. It's like trying to tune into a clear signal while the radio is still crackling with interference. You can't receive while in reaction. The field is listening to what you are in the moment you respond. So how do we shift? We regulate, not just mentally but somatically. We notice the moment of activation, and instead of acting from it, we breathe through it. We hold the sensation without collapse. We choose neutrality, not as suppression, but as sovereignty. Neutrality is not numbness. It is power unshaken. It's the space where you stop flinching from your own frequency, where you stop leaking energy into proving, fixing, chasing. It's the quiet knowing. I am not the emotion. I am the field that holds it. I am not the reaction. I am the observer that sees it. I am not the wounded signal. I am the one who rewires the station. In that moment of pause, between trigger and response, you reclaim your authorship. You no longer respond from the script of the past. You write a new one embodied, and the quantum listens. Not to your words, not to your wants, but to your unwavering state. This is why it's never really about what you think you want. It's about who you become in the waiting, in the silence, in the not yet. Because the version of you who has it is not reacting. They're not checking the clock. They're not asking for signs. They're not doubting the unfolding. They are being the signal, so clearly, so consistently, that reality must echo back. That's the shift. You don't get there by forcing belief. You get there by resting into the body until it no longer flinches, until it no longer resists its own safety. And from that stillness, the world rearranges. Not because you convinced it to, but because you became undisturbed. That's the signature of the shift. That's the code of coherence. And it's not loud, it's quiet, but its power is absolute. Think about this. What if the entire universe is listening to how you hold the gap? That space between intention and evidence, between the inner knowing and the outer confirmation. That sacred in-between, where most people start to doubt, react, and distort their frequency without even realizing it. That's the real test. Not the challenge of imagining the end, but the challenge of not betraying yourself in the space between, because that's where the old identity wants to reclaim the throne. The moment the external doesn't mirror what you desire, the nervous system flares. The subconscious reaches for the familiar. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should let it go. Maybe it's too late. Maybe it's not meant for me. And so the body tenses. The mind strategizes. The heart closes. But if you can stay open, if you can remain steady while nothing seems to affirm your becoming, if you can regulate your breath, soothe your system, and not personalize the pause, that's when the new timeline holds. You don't manifest from the moment you feel good about it. You manifest from the moment you stop abandoning yourself when it doesn't feel good. That's embodiment, because the thing you want already exists. In the quantum, it's already alive, already real, already done. But it requires a coherent vessel to land, a frequency match, a version of you that's no longer negotiating with the old frequency through emotional reactivity. And that means you have to stop letting the delay become your identity. Stop reading the lag as rejection. Stop calling the silence a verdict. The field is not judging you. It's waiting for your coherence, waiting for the moment you choose your signal without condition. This is the deepest form of love. When you choose the self you're becoming, even when nothing around you validates it. When you stop trying to earn the reality and start embodying it. It's the energy of I trust this because it's mine. I believe it because I've become it. I don't need evidence to feel it. I am the evidence. That's what bends timelines. Not intensity, but intimacy. Not more output, but deeper inward attunement. Because the world is not changed by reaction, it's changed by resonance. When your inner world becomes undisturbed by the temporary chaos of the outer, you begin to emit a signal that cannot be ignored. It's not passive, it's powerful. It's not silent, it's sonically precise. You become a tuning fork for your highest reality, and everything that doesn't match it starts to fall away, not as punishment, but as purification. And what remains is alignment. Not perfect days, but perfect resonance. Not constant proof, but constant presence. This is the way of the quantum artist, the one who doesn't wait for signs, but is the sign, who doesn't react to reality, but reprograms it from within. And the key, it's not in doing something new, it's in doing nothing from the old. It's in that subtle shift from managing the external to mastering your internal signal. That's how reality begins to dance, not to your fear, but to your frequency. There's a moment, small, quiet, but revolutionary, when you feel the familiar urge rise to explain, to defend, to chase, to check, to fix, and you don't. You feel the contraction in your belly. You notice the heat in your chest, but instead of moving from it, you witness it. You soften. You breathe deeper. That moment is not passive. That moment is powerful, because the greatest act of transformation isn't what you do to change your world. It's what you don't do when the old world tempts you to collapse back into it. It's the pause before the panic, the breath instead of the story, the sacred stillness instead of the spiral. This is where the identity shift actually happens. Not in vision boards or manifestation journals, but in the unglamorous, unfiltered spaces where the old self used to react, and the new self now remembers. Remembers what? That reality is delayed, that what you see is a reflection of who you were, not who you are, that the external is a mirror, not a master, and when you stop reacting to the old reflection, it fades, it dissolves, not instantly, but inevitably. But this requires emotional strength, not the kind that pushes through, the kind that stays present, the kind that can sit in the discomfort of waiting without letting the waiting become a wound, the kind that can hold the silence without calling it failure, the kind that can feel the pull of old reactions and choose stillness, not suppression, but sacred stillness anchored in trust. Because your nervous system is the gatekeeper. If it's dysregulated, the quantum can't land. If it's bracing, your frequency is broadcasting fear. If it's frantically checking for signs, it's saying, I don't believe it's done. And the quantum responds not to your hope, but to your embodied knowing. That's why you must become safe in the gap, safe in the space between desire and delivery, safe in the pause between intention and manifestation, because the old version of you feared that gap. They tried to close it with effort, with overthinking, with control. But the version of you that lives in the new timeline, they are unbothered, not apathetic, unshaken. They've shifted from reactivity to resonance. They no longer ask, is it working? They simply are the frequency of the thing already done. This is not delusion, it's alignment, not fantasy, but frequency fidelity. You don't wait for the reality, you wait as the reality. That shift from reaction to embodiment is the portal. It's what allows reality to reconfigure around you because you're no longer trying to change it. You're letting it catch up to who you've already become. But this demands faith in form, not the kind that waits with tension, but the kind that breathes with calm certainty. The flower doesn't open faster by force. The wave doesn't crash more beautifully because it's pushed. And your life doesn't shift through control, it shifts through coherence. And coherence begins when you stop reacting to what's fading, when you stop calling the echo a prophecy, when you sit in the space between and smile, not because it's easy, but because you finally remember. This is the place where reality bends. I used to think I had to chase alignment, like it was something far, something I had to become worthy of, something I had to earn through perfect thoughts, perfect feelings, perfect control. But I was wrong. Alignment is not something you find. It's what's left when you stop reacting from misalignment. It's already there, beneath the noise, beneath the tension, beneath the compulsive trying. You don't reach alignment, you return to it. But the mind doesn't want to hear that. The mind is addicted to motion. It equates stillness with stagnation. It thinks, if I'm not reacting, I'm not participating. If I'm not checking, I'm not creating. If I'm not doing, I'm falling behind. But the truth is, reaction is delay in disguise. Because every time you react from a state of lack, you signal to the field, I am the version of me who doesn't have it yet. And the quantum, perfect, neutral, immediate, delivers accordingly. That's why presence is the most magnetic force in the universe. Not because it looks powerful, but because it's energetically uncluttered. It doesn't plead, it doesn't prove, it doesn't posture, it is. And that isness, that deep, anchored neutrality, that's what sends the clearest signal. Think about how you feel around someone who is deeply at peace. They don't need to convince you of anything. They don't push their energy. They don't hustle for connection. They simply are. And their presence regulates you, softens you, pulls you into coherence without a word. That's the kind of signal the quantum responds to. So when you stop reacting to what you don't want, you become a match to what you do, not because you forced it, but because you stopped resisting your natural resonance. But let's be honest, this is not always easy, because sometimes the world pokes deep, the trigger cuts close, the old wound screams for attention. You feel the urge rise to fix it, to fight it, to flee. And this is the moment of power, not in what you choose to do, but in what you choose to be. Can you stay open even when it hurts? Can you remain curious even in discomfort? Can you hold your frequency steady? Not because the outside world has shifted, but because you have. This is mastery. The ability to stay internally anchored while the outer catches up. To stop rehearsing the worst-case scenario and instead rest in the feeling tone of what you know is true beyond the noise. It's a recalibration, a nervous system upgrade, a vibrational detox. And as you do this, something begins to shift, not just inside you but around you. People respond differently. Opportunities come with less effort. Timing feels smoother. Coincidences increase. The delay dissolves. Not because you pushed harder, but because you stopped interfering. You stopped reacting to the echo of who you used to be, and in doing so, you stabilized the version of you that already has it. This is not magic. It's mechanics, not fantasy, physics. You are no longer feeding the field with contradiction. You are offering one clear, steady, embodied signal, and reality has no choice but to mirror that. There's a moment when you stop needing the proof, when the longing quiets, when the timeline stops feeling like a race. And in that moment, something irreversible happens. You collapse the gap, not by doing more, but by no longer being divided within yourself. No longer two selves, the one who wants it and the one who doubts. No longer two frequencies, desire and disbelief. No longer two timelines, the current and the imagined. Just one unified signal. That's when reality moves, not in response to force, but in recognition of your wholeness. Because the quantum doesn't obey urgency, it obeys unity. The internal agreement that says, this is who I am, this is what I carry, and I do not need the world to reflect it before I feel it. And in that rare moment, you are no longer a seeker. You become the source. This is embodiment. It's not a mood, it's not a high, it's not pretending to be happy. It's the full body knowing that you are the generator of the frequency, not the reactor to the feedback, that you are not on the timeline. You are the timeline. And that changes everything. You stop checking the mirror for signs. You start radiating the image within. You stop bracing against time. You start walking as if the future is already inside your bones. This is not about detachment in the way most people understand it. It's not apathy. It's intimacy without obsession. It's caring without clinging. It's loving your vision so deeply that you refuse to reduce it to something you need to control. You stop being loyal to your limitations. You stop editing your energy based on appearances, and instead you become loyal to your signal, to your coherence, to your calm, anchored power that whispers, it is done. This is the moment where you begin to play with the field, where you realize that reality is malleable, that time bends to presence, that opportunity rushes in the moment you stop leaking energy into what isn't, but it requires a sacred discipline, a discipline of stillness, a discipline of choosing presence over panic, breath over bracing, knowing over needing. And every time you choose that, especially when it's hard, you send a new message to the field. This is who I am now. Not the one who waits, the one who wields, not the one who reacts, the one who remembers. And slowly, silently, the pieces start to shift, not all at once, not always dramatically, but undeniably, because your world doesn't need your control, it needs your coherence. And coherence can only exist where reaction has been dissolved. So the work is not to fight the old, not to beg for the new, but to become still enough, undisturbed enough, sovereign enough, that what is meant for you has no obstacle left to move through. You are no longer interrupting the signal. You are the signal. And then something strange happens. The things you used to chase start showing up, not because you finally figured out the right combination of affirmations or unlocked some secret trick, but because you stopped vibrating from the place that needed them to prove your worth. You stopped broadcasting the frequency of absence. You stopped creating from fear. You stopped reacting to the illusion of lack, and in doing so you became a match to fulfillment. That message comes, not when you beg for it, but when you no longer tremble without it. The money arrives, not when you obsessively visualize, but when you stop believing that your survival depends on its timing. The opportunity opens, not when you hustle harder, but when your energy no longer says, I need this to feel safe. And it's not because you stopped caring, it's because you stopped clinging. You detached not from desire, but from distortion, from the old survival script that said, unless I see it, I can't feel it. That's the illusion that keeps most people looping. Because the moment you need reality to change so you can feel different, you've reversed the mechanism. You've made your state dependent on the very thing you're trying to magnetize. And the quantum can't deliver through contradiction. But when your nervous system becomes safe without it, when your frequency stays coherent in the silence, when you stop reacting to the delay as if it's danger, you stabilize the version of you that already has it, and that's the version the field listens to. That's the signal that creates collapse. Not collapse in a chaotic sense, but collapse as in compression of timelines, convergence, acceleration, because everything you desire is already orbiting you, waiting for a coherent opening. And the second you stop reacting to what isn't, you make room for what is. This is the paradox. You manifest not by moving toward it, but by ceasing to move against it, by ending the emotional resistance, by unhooking from the narrative, by becoming internally undisturbed. It doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't identify with the temporary emotional weather. You learn to let the storm pass without anchoring your worth to it. You learn to observe the flicker of old patterns without reacting. And in that consistent, compassionate awareness, you dismantle the scaffolding of the old self, not by fighting it, but by no longer feeding it. And what remains is a frequency so pure, so steady, so quietly magnetic, that life must shift. Not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped interrupting it. You surrendered the noise, you reclaimed the signal, and now everything begins to orbit that signal. Not someday, now, because reality only ever responds to who you are now. This is the moment where you understand, deep in your bones, that the universe was never withholding anything from you. It was mirroring you, not to punish you, to wake you, to bring you home to the part of yourself that doesn't need to grasp, chase, or prove. The you that is still, certain, soft, and unshakable. The you that no longer confuses tension with power, that no longer mistakes reactivity for participation, that no longer trades your peace for control, because now you see clearly the true alchemy doesn't happen in the instant something manifests. It happens in the quiet, unglamorous hours when you choose to feel safe in your own skin, without needing the external to validate you. That's where timelines collapse. That's where the old story finally dissolves, not because you destroyed it, but because you stopped acting from it. You didn't need to overpower your shadow, you just stopped identifying with its voice. You didn't need to override your fear, you just stopped believing it meant anything about your future. And in that moment, something within you becomes deeply available to life, to love, to receiving, not in fragments, in full coherence, because there's no more war inside, no more fight between who you want to be and how you actually feel, no more battle between hope and doubt, just the still hum of inner unity, just the grounded breath of someone who stopped trying to escape the now and started embodying what's already true in the quantum. You become the anchor, the portal, the stable field where new realities can land, not because you're perfectly healed, but because you're no longer resisting your own presence. You're no longer reacting to the illusion of separation. You are whole, you are coherent, you are undisturbed. And in that frequency, life doesn't need to be chased, it comes, softly, swiftly, in waves that match your steadiness, because you're no longer a seeker, you're a transmitter, you're no longer a controller, you're a conductor. You don't need to manipulate the mirror, you only need to radiate the reflection. So now as the days unfold, you no longer wait for change. You walk as change. You no longer watch for signs. You breathe as the sign. You no longer ask, when will it happen? You embody, it already is. And in that stillness, timelines bend, worlds shift, and life finally begins to mirror the version of you that never had to fight to be chosen. Because now, you've chosen yourself, fully, quietly, completely, and reality responds.